Alright, in order to actually start throwing, the first thing you are going to have to do is something called centering. So I'm going to take a damp sponge. I don't want it completely soaked. I'm going to turn my wheel on. And the wheel works kind of like the gas pedal on a car. The further you push it down, the faster it goes. But you kind of need to just find speeds that work for you. I'm going to start by just putting my sponge down on the wheel head and sort of sponging it off. Just because I want to make a slightly damp surface, so then I'm going to wipe it off a little bit with my towel so it's not completely soaked. And then I'm going to take my clay, and I'm either going to kind of throw it down, or I generally prefer to just kind of grab it and push it down. And then from there, I'm going to start the wheel spinning slowly. And I'm just tapping the clay into the middle. The more centered I get it doing this, the less work I'm going to have to do later, which is fantastic because centering is honestly the most difficult part of throwing, I find. So what I'm going to do now is, if you look at it, you can kind of see it wobbling a little bit. So I'm going to add some water to the clay, and this is the stage at which you're going to want a fair bit of water to work with. And I'm going to start by putting my left hand on the side, starting to press in. I'm going to put my right hand over the top. And if you are left-handed, you would be doing this opposite, and you need to make sure you have a wheel that can reverse. And I'm pressing in with my left hand and down with my right. And I'm kind of forming it into a dome. And I am creating a little bit of an indent down at the bottom because this is where I'm going to bring the clay up with. And I'm going to just wipe down the wheel head just to keep the water from flinging everywhere. I'm going to do that a little more, and I'm just going to bring the speed up. And I'm going to actually start using more pressure on the outside because I'm going to start to raise this up because I'm going to do what is called coning. So I'm adding a little more water. So I'm going to cup my hands around the side. I'm going to dig in to the clay a little bit with both hands at the bottom. And I'm going to pull up the clay. I'm not going to release my hands quickly. I'm going to grab more water, start at the bottom, and I'm going to pull up the sides of the clay. So I start to form a cone. And I'm going to keep my hands going up until I'm over the top. And if it starts to get wobbly, I'm going to even that out with my thumbs to control it. And now I've got a little bit of a spiral, so I do not want that. So I'm going to pull this up a little more. And this is the point at which I tend to move the wheel to the highest speed possible. So I'm going to start with my hands down at the bottom. Again, I'm moving my hands slowly up, creating a little bit of a spiral. I'm not going to release it suddenly because if I release this suddenly, it will off-center it. I'm going to go all the way over the top until my hands meet. And I'm going to ease my hands off. Gradually easing the pressure and taking my hands away. Now I'm going to move this back down, so I'm adding water again, and I'm going to cup my thumbs over the top, and I'm just going to press down, and I have my fingers sort of splaying out a little bit because I want the clay to go out. I do not want to create a mushroom. A mushroom is the last thing that you want to form when you're doing this because it's going to be hard to move it back again. Alright, and then now I'm going to do the same thing I started with. I'm going to press from the outside with the left hand and from the top with the right, forming a dome. And I may have to actually cut my hands over the side to move it down properly. I'm going to feel this. I'm going to run my hand on the side, and do I feel it wobbling? And that answer is yes, because I can feel it's touching my hand at some points and not at others, so that means it is not centered. So what does it mean? I'm gonna cone up again. I'm gonna keep doing that and bring it down again, and I'm gonna do that until the clay is actually centered. So I'm gonna raise my speed up, because the faster it goes, the more the work the wheel itself does, rather than you. All the way up over the top. And is that an air bubble? Nope, that's okay. I'm gonna add more water to my hands, and I'm gonna move clay up again. Up and over the top until they meet at the center. Add more water. Cut my fingers over the top, guiding it down into a sort of donut almost, or a roll. And if it starts to feel dry, ease your hands off of the surface and get more water. Because if the clay starts to drag on your hands, you can actually risk off-centering it. So I'm going to clean up the wheel head again. And now I'm going to do that test again. And is it still wobbling? No, this is actually pretty good. If there's a little bit of wobble and you've already sort of coned up at least like 4 or 5 times, at this point, I would go to this wooden rib tool. I would just press it into the side, and you can just scrape a little bit of this away. This is kind of a last resort. It is not your first resort, because there's no guarantee that it's actually properly centered. That's just kind of a finishing. You can't just throw a lump of clay on the wheel and do that and it actually work. All right, so that is centering. And the last thing I will say is the next step is to actually determine whether you're going to make a bowl or a cup. Because if you're going to make something that's a cylinder, you're going to want this little bun to be taller. If you're going to make a bowl, you're going to want it more like this.